A young black woman boards a flight like any other traveler, but the moment she steps into first class, everything changes. A flight attendant singles her out, questions her seat, and humiliates her in front of other passengers. What no one knows: her mother is the CEO of the airline, and she's already on her way to the terminal. Just 11 minutes later, careers are on the line, and what happens next leaves the entire airport stunned. Stay with me. This is a story you need to hear. Before we begin, comment below and tell us where in the world you're watching from. And if this story moves you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful moments like this one. It all started as just an ordinary flight. She rose before dawn, not because she had to, but because something in her blood had learned long ago that black folks in America had better be early to everything, lest we be accused of being late to life. Maya Ellison moved through her apartment in the still of the morning, brushing her fingers across the framed photo of her mother, Celeste, who now ran an empire in the sky but once scrubbed airplane toilets in Mississippi just to keep the lights on. Maya wasn't just catching a flight, she was stepping into a ritual of memory and inheritance. Her boarding pass read 1A, first class, on a brand new Freedom Skies Dreamliner bound for Los Angeles. She had booked it herself, no favors, no corporate pull. She didn't need to drop her mother's name. That name, after all, was heavy. It carried pride, but it also carried expectations, and more dangerously, it carried assumptions, some that lifted you, and some that tried to chain you down. At the airport, the morning air was stale and cold, like overchilled ambition. Businessmen clacked past her with metal briefcases, their eyes brushing past her as if she were background noise. Maya dressed simply: jeans, a clean white shirt, and a navy blazer. No designer labels, no heels. She didn't need to announce herself. Her presence, her quiet, composed presence, had always been enough. But not for everyone. The first friction was subtle. The young man at the bag check offered a tired smile to the white couple ahead of her, joked about their weekend plans, then turned to her with flat efficiency. "Name?" he asked, eyes down. No greeting. No warmth. Maya replied with soft confidence, but the look he gave her luggage, just slightly too long, spoke volumes. A little suspicion, wrapped in professionalism. Not enough to report, but enough to feel. At the security line, the rhythm continued. The TSA agent barely glanced at the boarding pass of the white woman in front of her but held Maya's up to the light, squinting at the hologram like it was forged. She felt it then, that familiar, bitter weight crawling up her spine. The unspoken question: "What are you doing here?" It wasn't hatred. It rarely was. It was 100,000 paper cuts of disbelief. Micro-mistrusts. Micro-denials. A subtle choreography of exclusion. After clearing security, Maya wandered toward the gate, her breath steady but her heart drumming. Gate 47 shimmered with that new aircraft polish. A Davenport Air flag fluttered beside the gate's digital screen. For a moment, she smiled. Her mother had overseen this terminal's redesign. She had fought for that carpet pattern, the softer lighting, the lounge for working-class mothers with tired babies and nowhere to nurse. But inside this proud daughter still stood the ghost of a girl who once was asked in a college seminar if she was in the right room. At the gate, Maya took a seat and waited. A white man in a suit sat 2 seats down. He looked at her boarding pass, which she held in her lap, and said, without irony, "They letting folks in early now?" She looked at him, not unkindly, but without blinking. "No," she said. "They're just letting in passengers." He blinked. Didn't speak again. That was how it often began. With questions not asked to others. With tones that never turned on the next person in line. With that whispered disbelief that wrapped itself around every black traveler like a second security screening. Maya sat there quietly. She knew this flight would test her. She just didn't yet know how far. The overhead speakers crackled. "We'll begin boarding shortly for Flight 209 to Los Angeles. First class and priority passengers only." Maya rose. She straightened her back. She didn't need to prove she belonged. But she knew they were going to make her anyway. The plane had not yet left the ground when the second offense arrived, not loud, not even spoken, but there, carved in the side-eye of the man in 1C. He sat with the assured ease of a man used to being believed. A navy blazer, pocket square, too perfect to have ever seen real use, and a pair of leather loafers that said he had never run for anything in his life. He had watched Maya take her seat, then returned to his newspaper, but not before offering her a look that carried all the weight of his assumptions. Maya had seen that look before. On sidewalks when white women clutched their purses. In conference rooms when she made a point too well. In elevators when she was the only black woman and someone chose silence over acknowledgement. The plane rolled backward from the gate. Angela, the same stewardess who had greeted her with a detour to economy, returned now with a tray. She offered drinks to the passengers in row 1, beginning with the man in 1C. Orange juice or champagne, Mr. Ellis, she said with the kind of brightness that only appeared for certain passengers. The kind of brightness reserved for men with important names and forgettable minds. Champagne, of course, he said, winking. Angela poured the drink with a smile that, for him, reached her eyes. Then she turned to Maya. The smile vanished. Orange juice or water? That was all. No name. No courtesy. Just the offering of 2 options like ration cards. Maya raised an eyebrow. Is champagne not available to everyone in first class? Angela paused, just long enough for discomfort to stretch thin between them. It's usually reserved for select passengers, she said. Company policy. Maya smiled, but it wasn't kind. I see. And how are those passengers selected? Angela blinked. Would you like something to drink, ma'am? Yes. Champagne. Since I am, as it happens, a first-class passenger. Angela poured it, the glass trembling just slightly in her hand. She placed it down with the care one gives a cracked plate, then moved on without another word. The man in 1C cleared his throat and looked straight ahead, pretending he hadn't heard a thing. Maya sipped slowly. The plane lifted off, Atlanta falling away beneath them, the city's red clay roads folding into clouds. But Maya did not feel lighter. Altitude does not lift the weight of centuries. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and remembered her father's voice. You don't get to just be excellent. You have to be excellent and invisible until they decide you're safe. But excellence was not a cloak. It was a burden. Because even in seat 1A, even sipping champagne at 35,000 feet, she was not safe from the sneering curiosity of a man beside her or the conditional hospitality of a stewardess who saw her as a question mark. Maya's phone buzzed faintly with a saved message she'd read earlier that morning. From her mentor, Dr. Harris, a woman who'd carved paths through boardrooms Maya now walked. Don't let their surprise disturb your peace. They've never known who we are. But we have always known. The seatbelt sign chimed off. The man beside her finally spoke. So, are you in tech or entertainment? Maya turned her head slowly. What makes you ask? He chuckled. Well, I figure, first class from Atlanta to LA, you must be in one of those fields. You don't look like, well, government. Maya paused. She could have ended the conversation there. But she wanted him to hear it. Wanted him to sit in the truth. I'm in equity, she said. I ensure companies treat people fairly, regardless of race, gender, or class. He shifted. Ah, he said, reaching for his champagne. That kind of thing. That kind of thing. The plane was steady, but the air between them cracked like glass under heat. Maya leaned back, not to rest, but to prepare. Because this flight had hours to go. And the real turbulence was still ahead. There is a kind of violence in this country that never draws blood. It doesn't scream, doesn't shout. It smiles. It speaks in the language of policy, of protocol. It sits behind counters, stands behind uniforms, and says, I'm just doing my job. That is the violence Maya met next. An hour into the flight, the cabin had settled into the soft hum of jet engines and mumbled conversation. Tray tables clicked open. Laptops lit up. Somewhere behind her, a child giggled. The flight had found its rhythm. Maya had not. She'd been watching the stewardess, Angela, move past her seat again and again with studied indifference. There was no warmth in her movements when she passed Maya, only restraint. A kind of performance. The kind that said, "I see you, but I refuse to serve you with the same grace I give everyone else." The coffee cart came. Angela smiled at the man in 1C, Mr. Ellis, and poured him a refill without him asking. She did not look at Maya. Maya waited and waited. Finally, she pressed the call button. Angela returned after a pause, her lips tight. "Yes, I'd like some coffee," Maya said. Angela sighed, visibly. "We'll be doing another round soon." "You're doing it now," Maya replied, glancing at Ellis's fresh cup. Angela didn't speak. She turned and fetched the carafe, returned, and poured it too quickly. Some spilled. A few drops hit Maya's wrist. Angela didn't apologize. Maya didn't flinch. She took the napkin, wiped her skin slowly, then met Angela's eyes. "Thank you," she said flatly. Angela walked away. Ellis cleared his throat again. "She seems under pressure." Maya didn't answer him. She was tired of explaining storms to men who only knew sunshine. Minutes passed. Then came the announcement. Due to turbulence, all passengers must remain seated. But Angela walked past Maya's row. Then came back. Then stopped. "Miss," she said, louder than necessary. "Could I ask you to put away your laptop now?" Maya looked up. Her screen was dim. She was reviewing documents offline. "The seatbelt sign on," Angela said. "All devices must be stowed." "That's not what the announcement said," Maya replied calmly. Angela's lips thinned. "It's our internal safety policy." "May I see that policy?" Angela blinked. For a moment, the performance slipped. "Excuse me. I travel often," Maya said. "This airline has never asked that of me before." Angela stood firm. "I'm asking now. And I'm asking why." A silence cracked open between them. Passengers stirred. A few heads turned. Angela's nostrils flared, but she smiled. A thin, cruel smile. "Are we going to have a problem?" There it was. Not a slur. Not a shove. Not a scream. Just that line. The one used to put black people in place before the first chain, the first noose, the first gunshot. "Are we going to have a problem?" Maya sat still. The coffee is cooling beside her. Her pulse was loud in her ears. "No," she said. "We already do." Angela turned sharply and walked away. Minutes later, Reggie, the purser, approached. He knelt beside Maya's seat, his voice quiet. "Miss, I understand there's been some tension. I want to assure you we're monitoring everything closely." Maya looked at him. He was a black man, maybe 10 years younger than her. She saw something in his eyes. Apology, maybe? Maybe fear. "Monitoring it isn't enough," she said. "You know what's happening. You've seen it." "I can report it," he whispered. "But I can't fix her heart." Maya nodded. That was the truth of it. You can discipline behavior, but you cannot legislate love. You cannot find away a soul's rot. "Still," she said, "then report it. Make it matter." Reggie nodded and walked away. Maya closed her laptop. Not because she was afraid, but because she was angry. And she knew the fight wasn't over yet. The seatbelt light flicked off. The cabin exhaled. Passengers stretched, stood, fumbled for the bathroom line. But Maya remained still, anchored in her seat, the memory of that stewardess's voice still burning in her ear. "Are we going to have a problem?" "No, not a problem. A pattern." That's what they called it in boardrooms and legal memos, a pattern of behavior. But for Maya, and for every soul who looked like her, it was life. It was normal. That bitter, bone-deep knowledge that your humanity could be questioned not by force, but by a voice wrapped in velvet and ice. Angela returned. Now she didn't bother hiding her disdain. She leaned in just enough to violate space, holding a tray of napkins and mints like a gatekeeper with a grudge. "We're beginning our mid-flight service," she said. "Is there anything else you'd like to request?" It wasn't a question. It was a challenge. Maya didn't look up. "Just my dignity," she said. Angela blinked. Her smile cracked. Then she leaned in closer. "If you have a complaint, you can submit it to customer service. But don't take your bad attitude out on me." The woman in the seat across the aisle, who had been quietly watching, shifted. Maya caught her eyes for the first time, a subtle nod. Then the woman turned, pressed the call button. A small act of rebellion. Reggie came, his posture tight, his smile careful. "Yes, ma'am." The woman didn't hesitate. "You may want to speak with your coworker Angela. I've flown your airline 6 times this year, and I've never seen such targeted hostility." Reggie frozen. Angela turned sharply. "Excuse me," but the woman cut her off. "No need to explain. We've all seen it. Some of us just choose not to stay quiet anymore." Angela opened her mouth, closed it. And Maya? She stayed quiet. For now. She knew the moment was coming. The tall man in 1C leaned over. "I apologize for earlier. For not saying anything sooner." Maya turned to him slowly. "Don't apologize for your silence. Just don't carry it forward." He nodded, ashamed. Reggie returned to Maya a few minutes later. "I've documented everything, and I'm alerting the captain." But Maya knew what that meant. A file. A footnote. A possibility of a warning if someone in corporate found the courage to care. She looked Reggie dead in the eye. "Do you want to know what's worse than hate?" she asked. He nodded, slowly. "Indifference," she said. "Hate is loud. It burns. You can fight it. But indifference, it smiles while you're burning." His eyes darkened. "I won't be indifferent," he said. "Not this time." She didn't need promises. She needed witnesses. The cabin darkened as the lights dimmed for rest. Shadows fell across the aisle. Quiet, the kind that wasn't peace but paralysis, crept in. Maya closed her eyes. She remembered the way her mother had told her, when she was just 8, "Baby, you will be asked to prove you belong in places you paid to enter." She hadn't understood it then. But now she knew. Knew that racism wasn't always a cross burning on your lawn. Sometimes it was the stewardess who skipped your row with a tray of smiles. Sometimes it was the man who checked your ID twice. Sometimes it was the systems that ran in silence. But silence wouldn't win this time. She reached for her phone, drafted an email, addressed it to corporate. She wrote it plainly. No poetry, just facts. Cold, clear, irrefutable. She clicked save, but not yet send. Because this wasn't over. The flight would land in an hour. And the moment her feet touched the ground, Maya knew what happened in the sky would not stay in the sky. The next battle was waiting on the tarmac. And this time, the silence would speak back. The descent had begun, but the weight did not lift. The seatbelt sign blinked back to life, and the world outside the window turned from clouds to coastline. Maya sat rigid, one hand on the armrest, the other clenched around her phone, not as a device now, but a vessel. A witness. A torch. She could feel it. That shift in air when discomfort becomes reckoning. When people who looked away before suddenly start whispering, glancing, calculating. Everyone in first class now knew. Not because she said a word, but because they had seen enough, heard enough, and perhaps, for the first time, believed enough. Angela did not return. Not once. Instead, Brian served drinks in nervous silence, offering kindness with every pour as if trying to mop up a stain he did not spill. Reggie passed through with clipped apologies, his eyes searching Maya's face not for forgiveness, but for instruction. It was not his place to offer resolution, and he knew it. But still, the shame lingered in his step. Maya looked around the cabin. The man in 1C, now sitting straight, alert, eyes front, had become a reluctant ally. The white woman across from Maya, the one who had first spoken up, nodded again when their eyes met. That kind of nod between people who might have lived two different lives but stood at the same fault line. Because that's what America was. One long fault line. The plane touched down at LAX with a thunder of rubber and runway. Maya braced, not for the landing, but for the theater that would follow. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt exhausted. There was no joy in holding the moral high ground. Just altitude sickness. The doors opened. Passengers filtered off like churchgoers after a sermon that struck too close. No one said much. A few offered her fleeting looks, some full of respect, others awkward, like they'd just realized their own silence was a form of violence. Maya stepped into the jet bridge. Waiting at the end stood a woman in a navy suit with silver at her temples and fire in her eyes. Her mother. Evelyn Cole did not rush. She didn't speak. She just opened her arms, and Maya walked into them, not as a victim, but as a witness. The embrace was quiet, but beneath it pulsed centuries of struggle, of dignity, of refusal. Behind Evelyn stood two Davenport Air executives, flanked by Reggie. They looked stiff, corporate, but they were listening. Evelyn finally stepped back. She didn't look at the staff. She looked at her daughter. "Tell it," she said. "Tell it plain." So Maya told them. From the gate to the sky. From the smile that was never meant for her to the accusation that she didn't belong. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. Because truth, when spoken in its full measure, does not require volume. Only clarity. When she was done, Evelyn turned to the executives. "I want a full investigation. I want names. And I want every employee restrained. This isn't a PR problem. It's a moral one." The older executive, a man in his 60s, with soft hands and a tie that cost more than Maya's rent, tried to interrupt. Evelyn silenced him with a glance. "This happened to my daughter," she said. "But it could have been anyone's. And it has been, many times. You just didn't hear about it." Maya stood beside her mother, taller somehow. Not because she had fought back, but because she had survived being asked, yet again, to prove her worth. The executive finally spoke. "We'll do everything necessary." Maya replied no. "You'll do everything right." Behind her, passengers passed in the terminal, unaware that just beyond the glass and metal, something quiet and historic had taken place. A reckoning that didn't come with riots or headlines, but with presence, with truth. That day, Evelyn didn't just protect her daughter. She passed her the torch. And Maya didn't flinch from the fire. The lounge was cold, not in temperature, but in silence. The kind of hush that hangs in a room where too much truth has been spoken. Evelyn Cole sat at the head of the long glass table, Maya beside her, the fire from their confrontation at LAX still simmering behind their eyes. Across from them, the airline's leadership sat in grim formation, executives with folded arms, furrowed brows, expensive pens poised above notepads they would never reread. It was no longer about an incident. It was about a culture. Evelyn, who had built Davenport Air from little more than a dream, didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her presence was enough. She spoke of the countless passengers like Maya, people whose dignity had been quietly dismissed in first-class cabins, security lines, and board meetings. Not always shouted down. No, the real cruelty was in the whisper, the unspoken assumption, the pause that said, "You don't belong." Maya watched them squirm. Not because they had never heard these truths, but because they had never been forced to feel them. "We trained them," one of the board members finally said. A white woman in her 70s, a survivor of the movements of the 60s, perhaps, or so she'd convinced herself. Evelyn didn't flinch. "No, you didn't. You informed them. You ran a slideshow and checked a box. You didn't train them to see my daughter. Or to see the young man with dreadlocks who buys a business class seat with no apologies. You didn't train them to see the woman in a hijab who speaks 3 languages but gets asked if she packed her own bag. You trained them to protect your comfort." The woman said nothing. The room bristled. Maya leaned forward. "You know," she began, her voice steady, "all my life I've been told I was lucky. Lucky to have a mother who built a company. Lucky to sit in the front. Lucky to walk through doors most people can't even knock on. But luck doesn't insulate you from what people refuse to unlearn." She paused, letting it sink in. Her eyes scanned the room. "You think this only happens when someone's being racist. But it's not about slurs or shouts. It's the way a uniformed woman looks at my clothes and decides I can't afford my own seat. The way someone smiles when I speak articulately. The way I'm asked again for my boarding pass. It's the erosion of belonging, drip by drip." A long silence followed. Then Evelyn spoke again, softly now. "We are not asking you to apologize. We are asking you to rebuild. To tear out the rot in the walls of this company and start again." Her voice dropped lower, more intimate. "Because if my daughter, who carries my blood and this airline's name, can be humiliated like that, what do you think is happening to the folks with no power, no name, no one to call?" No one argued. There was nothing left to say. Weeks passed. Angela was fired. Miss Kingston, too. Not out of vengeance, but principle. But Evelyn wasn't satisfied with the punishment. She wanted prevention. New policies were born, not crafted in the vacuum of white paper and PR optics, but in open forums, town halls, and staff testimonies. Diversity training became dialogue. Anonymous complaints were investigated, not ignored. First-class cabins were evaluated not just on luxury but humanity. And Maya? She didn't fade back into anonymity. She stood before every new hire class, every flight crew on boarding, and told her story. Not as the CEO's daughter, but as a Black woman who demanded her seat in a world that kept trying to take it away. Some listened. Some nodded. A few rolled their eyes. But they couldn't unhear it. One night, months later, Evelyn and Maya walked through a quiet terminal. Just the two of them. No suits. No cameras. Maya stopped at a gate where a young Black girl in a hoodie sat beside a first-class sign, scrolling through her phone. Evelyn leaned over. "Do you think she knows?" Maya smiled, soft but sure. "She will." They kept walking. Past the glossy advertisements and glowing departure screens. Past the polished marble and the gates that once tried to shut them out. Because history wasn't only written in courtrooms and protests. Sometimes it was reclaimed in jet bridges and seating charts. Sometimes the revolution boarded quietly, no fuss, no press, just a name on a manifest and the right to belong.